Well, for more now, let's get the latest with our U.S. correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who joins us from New York. Sherwin, you've just heard, of course, U.S. President Donald Trump. They're very optimistic on this peace still going through. He says finally there will be peace in the Middle East. But while there appears to be some renewed momentum for ending the conflict in Gaza, there are likely to still be some major differences and stumbling blocks as these negotiations get underway in Egypt as we speak now. Sherwin, especially on the current conditions being agreed to by both camps.
Remember, Alicia, that there has been mediation that has been working parallel to the conflict in Gaza since October 7th, basically 2 years ago, right? We are on the cusp of the second year anniversary of this conflict, the attack on Israel and the response by Israel in Gaza that has largely decimated the enclave. And so it's important to note that as much as there is momentum now, the Qataris, the Egyptians and the United States have been working very hard as mediators for the last 2 years and not always achieving the results that the broad international community has hoped for. So we're at the beginning of something here. There is some momentum now. Hamas gave an affirmative response on Friday to elements of Donald Trump's, the President of the United States, peace plan. But as you hear there from our colleague in Israel or the U.S. President himself, there are some sticking points, right? Will the Israelis withdraw once the hostages are released? What does that exchange look like between getting the 48 hostages, some that are not alive, in exchange for Palestinian prisoners? What is the future of Hamas in terms of disarming? Is there a concern from Hamas that were they to disarm, the Israelis might continue to fight in Gaza? Will there be security guarantees provided by the United States? These are going to be some of the sticking points. Also understand who is in the room in Sharm el-Sheikh, right? The Israeli delegation includes officials from the spy agencies Mossad and Shin Bet, the Prime Minister's foreign policy advisor, and a hostage negotiator. Then you got the Hamas delegation, which is led by the Gaza leader in exile, Khalil al-Hayya, who, Alicia, survived the Israeli strike on the Qatari capital of Doha some weeks ago that actually killed his son. So these are some of the dynamics that will be playing itself out over the next few days. There's optimism from the United States. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu believes there'll be some sort of deal within the coming days. We have to watch and see.
Absolutely, Sherwin. But what has been some of the reaction from the United Nations specifically that has seen front and center or has been front and center in pushing for a ceasefire in Gaza that could also allow for it to surge humanitarian aid into the enclave? The Red Cross already there indicating its readiness to get the ground pieces in motion in Gaza, Sherwin.
They are ready to move, right? The humanitarian situation has been dire, catastrophic. I mean, we run out of adjectives sometimes to describe what has happened in Gaza for a very, very long time. And the United Nations has been consistent in calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire. There have been multiple attempts in the UN Security Council, often vetoed by the United States, but that has not changed the refrain here that for them to be able to deliver humanitarian aid into the enclave at scale, right, meeting the needs on the ground, the bombs need to stop falling. You cannot do that in an environment where there is an ongoing conflict. You simply cannot protect the humanitarian workers to the extent that they require protection so that they can deliver, the aid that is required on the ground. And that how many humanitarian workers have been killed in this conflict, hundreds of them, many associated with the UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, in Gaza. And let's not forget how many journalists, Palestinian journalists in the main, that have been killed in Gaza. The UN Secretary General said he welcomed and was encouraged by Hamas's initial statement of affirmation here in terms of moving this process forward, reiterating his call for an immediate ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire, the unconditional release of all the hostages, and unfettered humanitarian aid into Gaza. Tom Fletcher, Alicia, is the head of humanitarian affairs here at the UN. He says Trump's Gaza initiative opens a window of opportunity. It offers us a chance for Palestinians to receive life-saving aid at scale and to bring the hostages home. We are ready and eager to act. They have 170,000 metric tons of supplies, medical supplies, food, aid, sitting on the borders, sitting there at the corridors waiting to go in. They need a ceasefire to be able to distribute that aid.
Absolutely, Sherwin. As we heard, 20 Palestinians, some of them aid workers, were actually killed in some of those airstrikes in Gaza early this morning. But let's wrap up our interviews there, Sherwin. Speculation is also rife that Netanyahu might even lose his valid support if he in any way drags his feet or reneges on this current deal. What can you reliably tell us about how the Trump camp would then react to this?
Yeah, there are some. Remember, there are. Often the audience is domestic, right? There are constituencies here in the United States that Donald Trump will speak to. There are constituencies in Israel that the Prime Minister will speak to. I don't think he is too concerned about the immediate ramifications because he's been under pressure domestically for a very long time to get the hostages home and agree a ceasefire, but hasn't moved perhaps as swiftly, favoring rather the military pressure that he believes has been brought to bear on Hamas to bring them to this point in the negotiations. But certainly there have been protests in Israel consistently calling for the hostages, for a deal to be made, the hostage families. I mean, just think about it, almost 2 years and the hostages have not been brought home. This has been a traumatic moment for those families and for the Israeli citizenship at large, just as it's been a traumatic moment for the Palestinians. And remember, these images are being broadcast around the world. We can all see what is happening in Gaza. And so a great deal of pressure to get us to the finish line here. But remember, we're at a beginning of a process here where a lot can still go wrong. So no bets are on until they're on.
All right, Sherwin, thank you so much as always for that comprehensive update. That is SABC News correspondent in New York, Sherwin Bryce-Pease, with the very latest on the Trump-Gaza peace deal.